You can interview better than 99% of people out there if you just do these 3 things that no one talks about. And by the end of this video, you'll have the tools to do these 3 things and secure that offer that you deserve. Hey, I'm Preston Chin, and I help people speak brilliantly when they're put on the spot at work. So if you want to be a better speaker, make sure to subscribe. So the number one thing that you need to do is you need to understand what your hiring manager cares about, but it's not what you might think. They don't care about getting just the best candidate on paper or the most qualified candidate with the right number of years of experience. Instead, your hiring manager wants to get the most committed candidate, specifically one who's willing to stay with them for at least 3 years. Why committed? Because it's so expensive for them to fire you, then replace you, then train that new hire. It could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they can't afford to make the wrong hire. So the question now becomes, how do you position yourself in a way that indicates your commitment specifically to them? And the trick is to not talk about these things that everyone talks about, which is the company culture, or how they've loved using the product, or how they know someone who told them about the role and said, you should work here. Those types of answers are not going to help your hiring manager feel confident that you are committed to them in particular, to their specific role on their specific team. So how do you actually address that concern and stand out above everyone else? You need to give what I call your trademark narrative. This is not just a simple tell me about yourself. This is explaining 3 things. Number 1, which is where are you today? Number 2, which is where do you want to be in the next 5 years in your career? And then number 3 is how is this specific role that you're applying for going to help you bridge that gap? So let me break down exactly what you need to say sentence by sentence when you give your trademark narrative. So there are 3 core pieces to your trademark narrative. There's what you're currently doing in your role. There's where you want to be in the next 10 years and how this role is the right fit to helping you get to your ideal state. So let me give you the exact formula to crafting your trademark narrative. It starts off by understanding how you can frame each of these pieces with a simple sentence template. So when you articulate your current state, you can simply say, I am currently a blank, that's your role, at blank company who focuses on blank, which is your core value prop, in order for our company to blank, which is why it ultimately matters to your current company. So how might you actually use this in a real life scenario? Well, let's pretend that you're a business development director at a software company. So if I were articulating my current state, I might say something like this. I'm currently a director of business development at X software company who focuses on building out our ecosystem and go-to-market partnerships in order for us to accelerate revenue faster. That's it. It's 1 sentence. So in order to describe your ideal state, you need to articulate 2 things, which is 1, what are the core skills and or experiences that you're looking for right now? And then 2, where do you ultimately want to be in 10 years? So how you do this is you say something like this. In my next role, I am looking for X skills and or experience in order to blank, which is where you ultimately want to be. So if I took that same BD director example, I could say, in my next role, I am looking to build out an entire business development function from scratch for a high growth startup because I ultimately want to lead all go-to-market functions for a fast growing startup in this space. And the last piece is very easy. You just need to explain how the specific role you're applying for can fill in that skills and experience gap that you need in order to get to your ideal landing spot. So you could say something like this. Based on what I've read and learned, I believe your role on your team will help me get the ideal and then blank, which is your skills and experiences that you talked about in step 2, in order to progress in my career. Once you've told this narrative, it's crystal clear that you're committed to their specific role above anybody else. And they can believe it because it's your story to tell. So you've got your trademark narrative to stand out as a committed candidate. But if you can't show that you're a strategic candidate, someone who is deeply thinking about their core business problems, you won't stand out. But how do you actually do this effectively? So let me tell you the secret to this. And in order to get there, you need to know this story. So I lead a business development team and I'm looking to grow my team. So I'm comparing two candidates in the final stage. And there's one question that differentiates the ideal candidate from the not so ideal one. And that is this: which partnership opportunity should we pursue if you are in this role today? So candidate one says, well, I used to work in the legal industry, and based off what I know your product does, I think it'd be great to partner with this company in the legal space because the use case would make so much sense. And that's not a bad answer. But then the second candidate comes along and she says, well, based off the job description, it's clear to me that the number one challenge that the team is facing is finding partners that help you go deeper with your core persona, which is in X and Y functions. So with that in mind, I want to know, how would I drive the most engagement for that core persona with which partner, and which type of opportunity or use case would drive to the most influenced revenue? So right away, she's anchoring her ideal partner opportunity based off core criteria that she knows that we're going to care about. Now, how is she understanding the core criteria that is needed to evaluate an opportunity? She does this by looking at the job description and specifically trying to understand the core business challenges that we're facing that we need to overcome, right? And if she can anchor whatever she presents around the key challenges, then I know that anytime I put her on a project, she's going to think not just how do I check the box, but rather how do I move the metric? So let me demonstrate how you can go about doing this the next time you're evaluating an opportunity. It requires you to take the job description and actually assess it deeply to understand what are the core business challenges that I would solve in this role. So let's take this job description for the Senior Technology and Platform Strategy Manager at the National Basketball Association. So if I'm reading through this JD, what specifically am I looking for in order to understand their core business challenges? Well, one of the fastest ways you can do this is actually with AI. So what I like to do is actually copy this entire job description, right? And then I like to go into an AI tool like Claude.ai, and I type in something like this as my prompt. If I were the CEO of the company hiring for this position, I want to hire the person who deeply understands the core business challenges that I'm trying to solve for with this position. Please articulate the top 3 challenges that I'm looking to solve for with this job description. That way I can position myself to be the best strategic hire for them. So then I will just copy and paste that JD that I just copied over, and then I'll click enter. And now we'll let Claude do its magic and extract some of the key things that they're looking for in this next role. So the first thing they say is fan data integration and audience segmentation. The second is revenue growth for direct-to-consumer products. And the third is marketing attribution and ROI optimization. So let's just look through this and make sure that it checks out. The NBA needs someone who can seamlessly connect their fan data across multiple platforms and technologies. They're struggling with taking the rich fan data in Snowflake and utilizing it across other channels, all right? So that's one key problem, which is they have disparate sources of data and they need a way to consolidate it in order to make it actionable. So how can I articulate stories and experiences that show that I can take large sets of data from disparate systems and make them more actionable for my organization? The second thing they mention is they're focused on accelerating acquisition, reducing churn, and increasing LTV or lifetime value for direct revenue streams, particularly NBA League Pass. So they're struggling with subscription growth and retention. So how can I articulate stories that showcase how I've skyrocketed growth for perhaps a declining product, or have improved retention through my marketing analytics background? And the third issue is marketing attribution and ROI optimization. So they're struggling to effectively measure and optimize their marketing spend across multiple platforms and campaigns. This is very similar to the first problem, but how do you ensure that you're maximizing maximizing ROI from the campaigns that you build. Now, it's always helpful to actually compare what the JD has with what Claude delivers. But when you take this approach, it allows you to focus on the most crucial stories you need to tell in order to stand out to your hiring manager. Now, if you got a lot of value from this video so far, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed. It really helps out grow the channel. So you know how to show yourself as a committed candidate with your trademark narrative. You know how to address the core business challenges that your hiring manager cares about by going deep in the job description. But there's one key problem, which is you don't know how to articulate your stories in a way that actually resonates. Because let's face it, you're probably rambling. I've been in too many interviews where interviewees spend at least 3 to 5 minutes answering a question, and by the time they're finished, I'm looking to end the interview. So how do you answer your questions succinctly? Well, it's not what you might think. It's not the commonly taught STAR formula, which is situation, task, action, result. And the reason why I don't like teaching this framework is because situation is where people get stuck. People tend to give way too many irrelevant, unnecessary details around what type of job they were in, or what type of problem they were using, or what type of data systems they were on. And that's not relevant to me as the hiring manager. So in order to get to the heart of the matter and get at what your interviewer will care most about, it's important to instead use this framework, which is CARL. CARL stands for challenge, action, result, learning. It's literally 1 to 2 sentences describing the core problem that you faced or the challenge. And the bulk of your answer is actually in the core actions. What specifically did you do to help overcome that challenge? And then you can give 1 or 2 sentences on the key results, and ideally they're quantifiable. And then finally, 1 sentence or so that describes what's the core takeaway, what's the so what for your interviewer. And what's most important is in the so what piece, you want to make sure that it ties back to what your interviewer cares about, which is again, solving for those key business challenges that you've already done your research on when you put the job description through AI. Now let's take that MBA job description and pretend that we are asked this type of question. Tell me about a time when you improved marketing effectiveness through better data integrations and audience segmentation. It's very specific to the role. So in order to use the CARL framework, I'm going to show you a hypothetical answer. Now, you can pause this, screenshot these results, but just know that conversationally, it might come off a bit differently. So if I were to show the challenge, it might look something like this. In my previous role at this company, we were facing higher acquisition costs and troubling churn rates. Our biggest issue was that the data was completely siloed, making it impossible to run targeted campaigns. Again, the challenge that I'm describing is very similar to the role that I'm applying for. Now, what about the action piece? So I started out by mapping our entire data architecture to find the gaps. What I discovered was that we had this gold mine of behavioral data sitting in Snowflake that wasn't being utilized in our marketing. So I brought the teams together across these different departments to redesign our pipeline. And we developed a framework for segmenting customers based off engagement patterns and subscription history into 6 key audience groups. And then I created SQL workflows that updated these segments daily in Snowflake and pushed them out to our marketing platform. And then I also implemented clean room technology for securely sharing audience data with ad platforms while maintaining privacy compliance. All right, so I'm walking through some key action items that are very relevant to the core challenge, again, that I have found in the role. And remember, in the action section, make sure to take ownership of your actions. Use more I's instead of we's. But note here how everything that I am doing in this key piece is highlighting key actions that I think are going to be relevant to the role. Then the result is simple. The results were impressive. We cut acquisition costs by 27% by shifting budget to channels that were actually performing, and our churn rate dropped. Again, I'm highlighting the key metrics that I know the MBA is also thinking about when it comes to selling their League Pass product. And then what about my learning? What I took away from this experience is that effective marketing technology isn't just about the tech, it's about creating actionable insights that drive business results, right? I learned how to create a single source of truth for customer data and the power of real-time segmentation. Again, addressing the core challenges that the MBA is facing and that they're trying to address with their particular role, right? Fragmented data sources, looking for a single source of truth. So that's how I'm going to be articulating the learning. So if there's one thing that you remember, it's to use the Carl framework. And then secondly, make sure that the key actions, the key results, the key learnings are lining up to the core business challenges that you know that the role you're applying for is going to face. So you're practically there. You know how to master the interview in order to stand out as a strategic next hire. But there's one thing that's missing, which is you can't just randomly tell any story you want. You need to have your core stories, your core 8 stories from your resume that you can use to answer practically any question that you're asked. And in order to get those stories, you're gonna need to document them. So if you're looking to actually take your interviewing skills to the next level, I highly recommend getting my free template. The link is in the description. And also subscribe to my newsletter where every single Saturday, I'll give you a core strategy and framework to helping you master speaking on the spot at work, especially for interviewing. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Take care.